Good afternoon everyone, and welcome back to the Nature Patch. My name is Robin, and today I'm going to be showing you something a little bit different, and that is how I feed my worms. So I do have a little worm farm set up that I use to produce natural organic fertilizer for the garden. So I use the fertilizer in two different ways. I can either use the worm castings, which is basically worm poop, or I can use the worm tea, which is all of the juices that are drained out from the system that I capture below. But today I wanted to show you how I'm feeding my worms when they need a little bit of a boost. So ever since we moved in during winter's typically a really slow period for worms, or at least it is that I've experienced. But there are some ways that you can increase the productivity of your worm farm throughout the winter and whenever it's going a little bit slow. So I've had this worm farm for about 2 years now, and it has produced litres and litres of worm tea and worm castings that my garden has absolutely loved. I'll go over and show you the worm farm and show you the first tip on how you can increase your productivity within your worm farm. So my first and number one tip when you've got a slow worm farm is to check how much food they have. If they don't have a lot of food there, my main tip is to feed them something that's actually delicious. So fruit is something that's really high in water and decomposes really quickly, which means that it attracts all of the different microbes and bacteria and fungi, all of those good things in the soil, which the worms actually feed off. So in this bowl here, I've got some watermelon rind, some papaya skins, papaya seeds with some of the flesh on it. Bananas are an absolute must for worm farms, and also some strawberry scraps. So these will all typically decompose really quickly, give fast food for your worms, and really increase your population. Although feeding fruit is a great thing for your worm farm, you want to make sure that you don't overdo it, or else it can become pretty smelly and the food can rot rather than the worms actually eating it. So I know my worm farm pretty well, and I know that this is a good amount of food for them that they will be able to consume. But if you only have a really small population, I'd recommend just doing a little bit at a time to see how fast they eat the fruit, and then go from there and keep adding on every few days. Worms can typically eat half of their body weight each day, and I have hundreds and hundreds of worms in there, so this food is not going to last too long in there. Another thing I found you can feed your worms that they really enjoy is coffee grinds. So this is some coffee grinds from the past 2 days that I've got, and these are used coffee grinds, so their pH is not as strong as fresh coffee grounds. And these are really great to sprinkle on top of your fruits and your vegetable scraps, because anything that's covered, the worms are more likely going to go to then eat the food. And then another thing I've got in here that worms go absolutely crazy for is tea bags. So I've got some green tea and chamomile tea. The only thing though with tea bags, I actually rip off the top bit here, and then I tear it open so that the worms can get into it a bit easier. And the reason I do this is that sometimes on tea bags you can actually have a little bit of plastic in these areas that isn't going to decompose. So you just want to check your tea bags to see if they are decomposable or not. Another ingredient that your worms are going to love is animal poop. So any kind of horse manure, sheep manure, cow manure, that's what worms naturally feed on, and there's a really great balance of nutrients in there and bacteria and fungi that they can thrive off. So if you do have a low worm population and you do have some poop around, I would highly recommend sprinkling a little bit over your worm farm, and I can guarantee your worms will love it. So this is my worm farm here. It's located right next to the kitchen, so I can just come out and put the scraps in really easily. So it's got 3 levels here. The bottom level is where all of the liquid kind of ends up, and then I've got a tap that I can turn on to get that out. This is where a lot of the worm castings are harvested, and this is my active layer up the top where I put all of my scraps in. So some of the worm castings fall down to this layer here, and then all the liquid into that layer, and I alternate these two whenever I am harvesting the worm castings. So another tip on how to increase the productivity is actually to put a cotton towel or a sheet over the worm bin. As I said before, anything that's covered is going to decompose quicker, and the worms like a really nice dark cool environment, particularly over summer. So you can see when I pull this back here, there is a lot of worm action here. There's a lot. So there's a lot of this dark matter around here, and a lot of this is worm castings. They don't prefer a lot of the harder scraps like potatoes and carrots. They take longer to decompose, but things like lettuce and fruits will be gone in no time. So I'm going to find the half that has the less food on it and then put all the food scraps onto it. Another tip you can do is on top of all of those food scraps, have a thin layer of some soil on top. This is already inoculated with a lot of bacteria and fungi and different microbes that the worms love. So this is going to be a really fast source of food for them once this comes into contact with some moisture from the fruit and a little bit of water. So worms actually eat a mixture of carbon and nitrogen, so it's good if you've got a little bit of leaves or cardboard, toilet rolls around. I chuck all of that in there and it's good for the worm's digestion. Eggshells are another great thing. Doesn't really speed up the process though, as they do take a long time to decompose, but I find fresh eggshells, a lot of the worms will kind of be wiggling around that to get all of the bacteria around the eggshells. So my last tip is to keep your worm farm hydrated. So like us, the worms and all of the bacteria and fungi in there need water to survive. So I like to give my worm farm a good drink every few weeks or so, where I just pour water through the whole thing and let it drip out, and that ensures that it's all hydrated in there and I don't have to water it every single day. The mat on top of it will also keep it nice and hydrated, so I'd also recommend doing that. So I'm going to go water all of that in, and then I should have some happy worms. Alright, so I'm going to cover this up, and then next time I have a lot of fruit, I'm going to put it on the other side and then alternate sides when I'm feeding my worms. Alrighty, so those were some ways on how you can increase your productivity in a worm farm. Worm farms are pretty easy to handle. It's really simple. If it starts to get too smelly, just add a bit of carbon or a bit of cardboard and anything that's dry and dead. And if it's too dry in there, keep feeding them food scraps and water it in, and they should be happy and give you some really nice liquid gold and black gold for your garden that your vegetables are going to love. I've had a worm farm ever since I was a kid, and it's such a fun thing to get kids involved in worm farming. It's a really interesting process on how they turn waste and scraps into something that's gold for your garden. So I would 100% recommend getting a worm farm. You can really create your own using just a bucket and a tray underneath. You don't have to have the full-on worm setup like I do, but it was a gift, and it also makes a great gift. So for Christmas, if anyone is after a worm farm, it's a great gift to give. So let me know if you've got any tips on your worm farming. I would love to know. And thank you so much for watching this video. Please like and subscribe for more videos like this, and I will see you in my next video. Happy gardening. Bye.